A Sweet Taste of Cake by The Descendant. Chapter 7. The game has changed. The door of the Hospital Loan and Trust came open. As the bell rang out with a festive jingle, a few flakes of holiday snow followed an amber-colored colt as he walked within. The secretary looked up to see the familiar colors of carrot cake emerging from beneath a festive dusting. The freckled face smiled up to her as he stomped his hooves and tried to shake off most of the snow that clung to him. "Hello!" he called out, doing his best to keep the snow upon the rug that lay in the front of the door. "Happy Heartswarming Eve!" "Happy Heartswarming Eve, Carrot," she answered, replying to his smile with one of her own. He looked around the office and was surprised to see a little tree covered with magical lights. Upon contemplating it, he realized that there had been a wreath on the door as well. All of this struck him as a mite odd. The thought of Quarry's austere office. The stallion did not seem like one to whom the holiday would mean much. Still, the tree sat there, blinking away happily. Carrot lifted the check from the saddlebags and chatted with the secretary, Paperclip, for a little while. As he told her about how wonderful things were going at the bakery, his mind kept going back there, knowing that Cupcake was there right now, waiting for him. Right now, she was seeing to the welcome, if tiring, wash of customers that had drawn to the bakery in anticipation of the holiday. Together today, they were going to try something new, try to fill an unusual order. As he chatted with Paperclip, he suddenly felt the same pall fall over him that marked each of his appearances in the loan office. He felt the same tremble go through him, the same weight of eyes that had not diminished since he had been keeping the schedule, bringing the checks around. He lifted his eyes to meet those of Quarry. The stallion had not emerged from the closed door of the office, but instead, from what Carrot had assumed was a records room on the opposite side of the hallway.
"I told you didn't need to bring that one around until the day after the holiday, Cake,"
directed the stallion's words. Carrot took a discreet breath and tried to focus forward. He once more found himself unable to look at the bulging stallion in the eyes for very long. I don't want to get out of the habit of bringing it along. Don't want to forget to bring it every 2 weeks. Stared at Carrot as he looked to where the check had been laid on the desk. He tried to lift his eyes once more. Quarry's gray eyes sat still deep in his cold features.
"Don't know why you chose every 2 weeks instead of monthly either. Cost you more in the end,"
spoke Quarry in his usual rumble of attached judgment, his tone implying dubious belief in Carrot's business acumen. Carrot felt himself wanting to answer, to tell the stallion that the sooner he was done paying, the sooner he felt that Cupcake would be with him as a true partner. He no longer wanted to be hanging on the fruits of her work for payments, that then they could spend more time simply being together. He felt himself wanting to tell the stallion that the sooner he was done paying back the loan, he would never have to sit here under Quarry's cold gaze again, no longer have to live with the idea of what would happen if something went wrong. The image of Quarry ripping apart the carrots could finally leave him. He glanced at Paperclip, saw the secretary still smiling. He wondered how she would be here. He wanted to say these things, as Quarry's deep breath filled the reception room. All Quarry could muster to himself was, I'm kind of motivated to be done with it." Quarry gave a non-committal "Urgh" and flicked his tail. All was quiet in the office for a long moment, the blinking of tree lights shining that much brighter at the approach of early winter nights. Suddenly Carrot remembered what he had brought with him, and always brought with him each time he had brought his loan payment. Attempting to slide out of his saddlebags, he caught with them once again, an accident that only seemed to happen with him in this place. He released the strap and held the bag to the floor. From within he produced 2 brightly wrapped parcels. As he placed them on the desk, they unfolded and revealed themselves as 2 fruitcakes. "Me and my brother. I made them for you both. Happy Heartswarming," he said as he looked at the 2 other ponies. "You know how much I look forward to you coming in," spoke Paperclip, Carrot marveling once more at how free and easily she spoke with the large form Quarry hovering nearby. Seems that the only other things other ponies bring us are bad news.
And excuses,
completed Quarry, raising his head to look into the paper baskets, each wrapped as the day were with the simmering paper. At once the heat of the room lifted the aroma of the warm fruitcakes into the air, filling the space with a holiday scent.
Damn it, that don't smell good, though,
said Quarry as he raised his head. He stared at the amber-colored coat as the carrot began glance.
Thanks kindly, Cake,
he said. Carrot felt himself fall under the uncertain and forgotten sense of Quarry's gratitude. He risked a small smile, and at that the stallion raised his head and looked down upon him once more. With that, the sensation was gone. You're welcome. Happy warm summer eve, over you, he said as he backed towards the door. With the tinkle of the bell ringing out once more, Carrot nodded and departed into the cold street. Paperclip rose up and began folding the paper baskets back together, preserving the warmth of the two gifts. As he did, she heard Quarry give a sigh and shake his head and turn towards his office. You don't need to be so hard on him, on Lamb, she said as she placed Quarry's fruit leg among the stallion's things so he would not leave it there in the office over the holiday.
There's two types of ponies in the world of money,
she heard him call from his office.
Those who owe it, and those who are owed. The two are as different as the good sun and the cold moon in certain mix.
Paperclip sighed, looked down at the two brightly wrapped boxes. He's not a bad colt, though, she said.
Never said he was. Just said he owes me money,
stated Quarry as he once more moved from his office to the supply room.
And I learned a long time ago that anyone who owes you money is always looking for ways to be done owing you money. Always wants something for you to get out of it. They either need to fear you, or they'll try to get up on you,
she sighed aloud.
Don't go thinking any different about Cake than you would the greasy goat lickers who come in here demanding this or that, and then they'll give the lawyers. He might bring us something from that daft-named bakery of his, but in the end, he's no different from those of us who tried to scare me with big words. As they go, Quarry is so tough.
She felt him shudder through the wall of the supply room, the four boys literally quaking as he attempted to regain himself from his growing anger.
I meant it when I said thanks, though.
He spoke in a neutral tone, his voice carrying from the supply room. She lowered her head and turned towards the window of the office. His cynicism washed over the room as it always had, moved through it in a form as palpable and forceful as Quarry himself. It was forceful. The slowly twinkling tree forgot to buoy her spirit. Paperclip lifted her head and began to ask him about some of the small affairs of the office. She instead looked up and see him standing in the doorframe of the supply room. Something hung from his mouth. Quarry walked fully forward and laid the gift on her desk.
Happy Heartswarming Eve, Paperclip,
the big stallion said, nodding to her. Thank you. I put yours among your things. Thought it'd be a surprise, she whispered. Quarry looked through to his saddlebags. There he saw a thin package nestled against the fruitcake Kate had brought.
Thank you, Paperclip,
he said, nodding once more.
Take the rest of the afternoon off. See you in 3 days.
Far out in some Market Square Ponyville, Carrot turned his attention to the now familiar structure. His bakery sat there in the middle of the open block of paving stones, Descenant happily puffing away. As he cantered by, he looked up to see the gingerbread trim, noted how festive it looked, how it had inspired what would happen with it today. He also noted the name on the sign. He still had not changed it, and the more he looked at Carrot Cake's Bakery Company, LLC, Incorporated, the less he liked it. Still, that was not something he had to ponder right now. right now was a far more welcome task that awaited him. He strode within and began to shake the snow from himself. As he did, a delicious scent steamed out over him and filled his nostrils. "Cupcake?" he called. "Are you?" Before he had even completed his question, she was already coming to him. Her hose falling across the wooden floors, coming to greet him at the door. Greeting him at the door, the realization made him very happy. "Any customers?" he asked as he took off his saddlebags. "Oh, a few," she said, looking up to him, her rosy eyes catching his. He leaned down and closed his eyes. Slowly, she lifted her nose and let a wide figure eight run back and forth between them as they nuzzled each other, and the sense that their touch warmed them. After a long minute, he raised his head. She smiled and stated, I think we have everything. Are you ready to try this?" He smiled down to her. She quickly brushed some of the snow from his orange mane, and the two dried deeper in the bakery. Together, they entered into the kitchen. The gingerbread had cooled, and now it was time to try to make the first gingerbread house the bakery had ever produced. It was a long struggle, one with many false starts. At times, it became a trial, an epic challenge. At other times, it descended into hilarity as parts collapsed and various components went flying across the room. Cupcake stood back at one point, saw how hard he was concentrating. He had never done this before, and yet she was astounded at his concentration, his dedication. She noted the persistence in his hopes. He made concentrated, perfect movements to create the details. At one point, he walked the back of his hoof across his brow, leaving a white streak across his forehead. With a giggle, she lifted the frosting tube, thought of leaving a great white doll above, but something caught her. Stopped her. "No, not this time," it seemed to say with a fine laugh. "But someday." Hours passed. As the appointed hour arrived, they stood together in the main showcase room of the bakery and awaited the pony who had commissioned the gingerbread house. It looked ill, lopsided. It reminded them both of the bakery itself when they had first set eyes on it. Cupcake saw the worry that floated in Carrot. He wanted to do this for so long. To move beyond just making bulk breads and rolls and move on to the world of creative baking. If the customer liked it, then anything was possible. Carrot felt an extraordinary sensation go through him. Cupcake's forelegs were across his withers. He felt her lightness upon him as he slowly nibbled his ear. Just drawing his ear across her lips with touches of her teeth. Just enough to draw him out of his worry. After a moment, she sat before him, and with that, he placed his legs around her. As the bell rang, the two jumped. An older pony stood there, smiling at him. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Smith," called the Cupcake as she drew herself up, fussing as Carrot stood it, saying, "Hello, happy housewoman," she said as she trotted forward to look over the gingerbread house that stood upon the display table. This one, man? Let's hear the gingerbread house I ordered." "Oh, yes," answered Cupcake. Is it okay? Does it look good?" "How much extra is it?" said Granny Smith, eyeing the two. I'm sorry, extra?" "One piece so much bigger I put an over fancy bits all over it. How much extra is a good judgment?" she said, her voice almost getting angry. Carrot and Cupcake looked at each other, and then back to her. "No, ma'am, nothing. That's pretty much just a standard house, like you ordered," he said. "This here's just your average gingerbread house?" she answered, her face frightened. "Colt, that's fine. That's mighty fine. My grandson or granddaughter will love it. Come up." Soon, Carrot and Cupcake absolutely beat with pride as they wrapped the gingerbread house in a protective box. Then, a pile of bits sat gleaming in the cash register as they saw Granny Smith to the door. "Happy housewarming evening to both of you. Say, this is your first housewarming together as a married couple?" Cupcake looked up and realized that she had once more lowered herself to his chest, that his head was over hers, and that she was wrapped within his forelegs. The two blushed brightly and made little sounds of embarrassment. "Oh," answered Cupcake. We aren't married." "You'll forgive me, I hope," said Granny with a wink as Carrot opened the door for her. "But we're an honest mistake. With how well you two seem to fit together." As the shop closed and the fires came out of the ovens, they soon found themselves close to one another again. As they sat there with their heads across one another's withers, they swayed slightly, as though in a dance. What are you doing tomorrow?" she asked without lifting her head from his withers. "What are you doing for the holiday?" "Oh," he answered, "not much, just Mom and I. Small gifts, dinner. There's not much I won't." He paused, felt her move a little closer to him, wrap her closer to his. This was fine. This could last him the entire day. "What about you?" he asked. To his alarm, she said nothing. After a moment, she lifted her head and started to back away. She reached behind the counter and began to fish around. Soon he realized what she was doing. As she turned back to him, she saw him jump for the rustic beams above, saw him snatch something. She had to admit, she wouldn't have thought to look there. The present student stood before the two of them. With a wise smile, she passed hers to him first. He opened it, and out came a bow tie. "Oh, well, I've never worn one before," he said as he looked at it, "though they are cool." She slowly wrapped it around him, felt the brush of her hooves against his neck as she tied the cravat, caught in the look in her eyes as she went upon him heavily. "And now, I don't know if I'll ever take it off," he concluded. She giggled at his statement as she got her gift. She took her time opening it. He quickly realized that she was one of those mares who valued the paper, would probably save it in the ribbon. Cupcake's eyes went wide as a small jewelry box stood before her. He flipped it open. The earrings stood there, catching the light. They're the only ones that I could find that match the color of your eyes." She looked down to the earrings. He obviously had not noticed that hers were not pierced. She smiled back to him. Cupcake knew that it did not matter. Since he had given her these, they soon would be. She leaned forward, laid her cheek to his, slid down the length of his neck to his shoulders. Once more the two sat there, swayed back and forth in the fading heat and the smell of gingerbread. She lifted her head and moved quickly, planting a small delicate kiss on his lips. He looked back at her quizzically. "That was for your mother, for me," she said as an understanding grin grew upon his face. "Pretty says he gets it, righty?" "Sure," he said as he cast his eyes down to hers. With that, she leaned in again, leaned in much deeper, leaned against him fully. With that, he answered a kiss that was meant for him alone. One that lasted a great satisfying while as the snow drifted around once more, and ponies went up the street outside singing holiday songs. The following morning, 3 happy fillies had bounced around inside their room, asking their parents to wake and go down with them downstairs. As they did, the presents sat there, shivering beneath the tree, and the first time in that household, peal of laughter and joy met a heartwarming day. On a mountainside far away, in Canterlot, the fabled city where magic both deep and terrible flows as freely as the waters that race through its channels, Irie's parents had joined her in the restaurant of their hotel. Before them, a magnificent buffet had been spread out, one that would consume the morning with the bounty it had offered. As the young turn sat with them, the family exchanged their presents. Leonard stared happily at his daughter as she regaled her mother with tales of palace intrigue and political intricacies. In a small white house, cheesecake and carrot cake woke late, greeted one another, and then went to brunch as he prepared a small kitchen. As he had sat in the living room, they exchanged a few presents and talked long into the afternoon. In another house, eager to wait. Philly eagerly awaited the anticipation of her little sister. In a large home on the other side of Ponyville, Cupcake had lain among her nieces and nephews. They implored her to help them open their new toys, asked her to play with them. As much as she rejoiced in the presence of those children, how much her heart swelled as they gave her their small school-made gifts and wrapped her in hugs. There was one she longed to be with, to share mornings like this. Back in that white house, he wished for her to be near. Corey, having forgotten something of importance, walked the quiet morning streets in a huff, lamenting loudly that there seemed to be no stores open. The old stallion stopped to breathe, the cold air falling as vapor from his mouth as he pondered the day, and music drifted from nearby houses. None of them could feel it. The partners, these players, in the game of this, but as they celebrated that morning, the strings of causality that linked each one to another wrapped around them that much more. As the trim as the ribbon around the packets, all of these participants had been drawn closer to one another, linked with the tendrils of fate that flowed from Carrot and Cupcake as they sat in the lights of their trees and thought of only one another. The scene moved forward once more, and as time passed, the holiday colors of the early winter faded into that deepest part, the least happy part. As this time sped on, the bakery kept producing its bounty, offering the warmth of breads and sweets to those who sought to escape the cold misery of winter. Carrot could only smile as the bakery began to serve those coming out the streets, those who were beginning to seek out the warmth, those caught in the allure and the smell of fresh-baked bread on a cold morning. As winter faded, Carrot found himself assailed by one of his most ancient of enemies, one he knew he could not face alone. In short, it was tax time, and he was horrible at math. Fortunately for him and his bakery, Cupcake was there. They decided that they would work together, Carrot doing the best he could to help her, and together they would finish the taxes one night. He couldn't help but look at her as she scratched away, looking every inch a true partner in its enterprise as he brought her warm drinks and treats to snack upon. He read the numbers back to her, constantly skipping over any details of the loan he had taken out. He did not want her to feel that she had placed any burden on him. He wanted her to know that he indebted himself to a pony like Quarry. He could still picture that fearful look on her face the day long ago in the mill. He slipped the loan payment's interest into the calculations, hid her from hope that she would not worry about him owing anything. He could not know it, but he had just committed a flagrant foul into the game of this. As the evening drew on, they found themselves in the inevitable position of being able to draw out some conclusions. As 10 o'clock rolled around, they began placing those conclusions on the forms. And with jaws dropping open, they realized that they had just finished their taxes. Not only that, but the best available evidence seemed to suggest that Carrot and his bakery were due for a refund, and not a small one at that. Celestia and simple deductions be praised. As they sat, the taxes went into the envelope. As they finished their treats and drinks, chatting as the night wore away. As Cupcake began to yawn, the hallway clock began to chime 11, startling her in the slightest. The mare in the moon cast her glance over the frozen streets of Ponyville. A sheen of ice covered everything, the Pegasi having letting it get too warm by a fraction of a degree during a day. I don't like you going out in that. You might fall, he said, gathering up jackets. Let me walk you home, to the lamppost. Then you could fall on the way back, and I'd feel horrible, she said as she tried to hide her small yawn again. Besides, I told him I'd be staying out tonight. Cupcake snarled and looked at Carrot. But I forgot to ask you. I didn't think to ask you. Carrot, may I stay here tonight? May I sleep on the couch or one of the chairs in the... Nah, you can sleep on my bed, he said as he immediately placed the coats back on the hook. Now let me put some fresh sheets on. You don't have to, she began. He saw it was already past her and trying up the stairs into the living room space above the bakery. He tossed various sundry items to his closet. He did not particularly care to have her see lying around his room, generally trying to straighten it as he went in a hurried state. He opened up the linen closet and was almost obscenely happy that were, in fact, clean sheets for her to lie upon. As he quickly stripped the bed sheets and blankets, a welcome sound came up the stairs. Wonderfully familiar hoofballs sent round along the bakery. He looked up to see her standing at the door of his bedroom, smiling a small smile. "Are you the gentleman?" she said, "and where will you sleep?" "Oh, somewhere." He fumbled with the sheets, whilst his unexpected, unmatched pillowcase fell from it. "Here," she said as she looked at her hoof. "Let me help." Together they circled the bed, laying the blankets and sheets. For the first time that evening he was wordless, Carrot unable to think of anything appropriate to say as the beautiful mare walked around his bedroom. All too soon they had finished. As he began to remove the earrings, he found himself blushing and turning towards the door. "If you need anything, the blankets are here in the linen closet, and the attached bedroom is a mess." "Out of order!" he cried in a small alarm. "So, use the one down the hallway, okay?" "Okay," she answered as she slowly trotted over to him and lifted her nose. His tiredness faded as the soft feel of her touch went through him once more, as the feeling of their presence drifted through one another. So familiar, welcome, was the touch that as she shifted her head, he knew what she was asking for. As they settled to their good-night kiss, he found himself opening his eyes to look upon her face as they parted. Silence hung there, neither speaking, flushes growing across their faces as they stood in the bedroom. Within both, the understanding hung there that there was more they wanted to say, that the night had simply come too early. Good night, Karen," she whispered, putting the conversation to rest for the night. "Good night. Good night, Cupcake," he said as he backed out the room. Soon he was going down the hallway as night seemed to settle around the bakery in deeper tones. Cupcake collapsed on the bed and rubbed her eyes. As the thoughts of numbers and deductions fell from her, she felt herself wanting to sleep, grateful for the expanse of the bed beneath her. It was warm enough in the room, and the bed was big and deep, but sleep would not come. As she wondered why, comprehension opened up in Cupcake. Here, once again, he had opened himself up, let her into the very innermost sanctum of his own personal self. Once more he had been open with her, and as moonlight flitted around the room, she saw all the little items. Everything about him was laid bare to her. Even as she laid on his bed, she realized she was still keeping secrets from him, even if they were for his own protection. For their dreams, they were still secrets. Her head turned and fell across the breadth of their bed. The sight of the new sheets that lay crisply beneath her, his scent still filled the room. It filled the bed, and as she thought of him, she knew that she was being unfair. She knew that most cults would not put up with it, would have demanded, but Carrot was no cult. No, he was a stallion, a real one. He was living for her, living for every little shred that she was giving him. He was hanging on hope. 10 months. For 10 months, she had shown him no more of her life than the front of her house, another pony's children, and her favorite restaurants. At that time, she had met his mother, and he had drawn the pain out of her. He had shared with her his hopes and dreams. He had waited for her, and never been anything other than kind. For 15 long minutes, it seemed like an hour, Cupcake thought about this. Thought about how, in her life, Carrot alone had not wanted anything from her but to be with her, to be near her. He alone simply wanted to marvel at her, look deep into her eyes, feel the warmth of her touch. In her life, she had wanted that from him alone too. He was the only one that had offered it without a price. 10 months. For 10 months, he had believed in her and trusted her. His mother knew. His mother was right. She did risk losing his love every moment she did not open up to him. But the idea of having him end up like the other stallions. Cupcake sat up in bed with a little cry of worry rising from her. Right now, she would have realized that there was one thing she could do to show him that his trust, his love was not misplaced. She could, in this moment, show him that she desperately wanted him in her life. That even an act as simple as those taxes completed downstairs was bringing them together. He deserved this. This proof. No stallion had ever been so kind to her, and loved her for herself. There was no other stallion in question so patient, so giving. In that instant, she knew how to let him know that he was winning the game of this. She tried from the bed and tried down the hallway on silent hooves. Garrett shifted uncomfortably, trying to keep the one blanket below him to keep the cold surface of the couch on his body, keeping the other over him as the spare room grew colder. He had ripped the seam of the couch trying to get the bed to unfold, and it jammed halfway, and now he laid awkwardly upon it on an angle, the metal bits glistening on his left side, threatening any number of wounds if he turned in the night. This was compounded by the fact that his face was now directly in the moonlight, no matter what position he took. The thought of these torments was driven from as he sighed and found a new set of rosy eyes staring down into his. "Cupcake?" he whispered. What's wrong? Do you... She pressed her lips to his so forcibly that the bed became unstuck and fell back into the sofa. He was able to take one small breath as it did, Garrett startling both his Descenant and her Descenant. As he lay there, she still stared down into him. To his amazement, her foreleg crossed over him and sat next to his head. With that, Cupcake slowly lowered her head again, catching his lips in a long, lingering kiss. She stood, took a few steps back, and raised her hoof to him. "Cupcake," he breathed. "Please," she said, her voice a soft tremble as she waved her hoof again. With that, he slowly stood, leaving the blankets on the couch as he gathered her hoof into his. With that, she led him down the hallway. As they entered the bedroom, she lifted his hoof and placed it against her face. He felt the warmth that was flowing within her. He swallowed hard and tried to remain calm as the mare stood with him in the night, staring at his bed. As the moonlight fell through the room, he took a soft breath, thought the most perfect thing he could say. He leaned down to her ear. "Wherever you want to go, I'll go there with you." If he could have gotten away with it, he would have slapped himself in the forehead. He had read that in a trashy pulp romance novel, most likely while waiting in a doctor's office. Even though he meant every word of it, he immediately imagined that it came very sort of awful. To his utter amazement, he went towards bed. "Lay with me." She sat upon the bed and looked at him. Just lay here with me, please, Garrett," she said as her frame was outlined by the moonlight. "Yes," he said, his voice cracking the slightest. "Of course!" "Of course, Cupcake." Carefully, he too entered the bed and rested upon himself behind her. As she settled to the crux of his body, wrapping herself in his frame, she felt his strength, his tenderness. In time, she knew she would call upon these. But at that moment, all she wanted was for his hooves. He reached around her, placing his forelegs along hers. With that, she placed her hooves upon his, and gave an easy sigh. As he felt her breathing, Garrett was suddenly very happy that he brought that king-sized bed. As the sound of her breath caught in his ears, Garrett suddenly became a fan of income taxes. As the feel of her body drifted across his, Garrett decided that lay with me, though not the destination he had fleetingly imagined, was not a bad place to go. Not bad at all. "Garrett, you are a stallion among stallions." "Garrett," she whispered, "I love you. I trust you. Please, don't give up. you'll stop trying to be with me, well, we're going to be together. I can do it. He kissed her softly on the cheek. As she lay there with her body safe and secure within his embrace, he ran his free hose across the tones of her mane, motherly stroking it as he felt her breathing slow to match his deeper tones, as her heartbeat slowed to match his. With that, she was asleep, the moonlight falling upon the soft expression that dwelt within her. Downstairs, the clock struck midnight, and a new day began. As every second ticked by, Garrett could not help but feel that he was sounding out the most perfect day of his life. As he felt himself treasuring each second that passed so she could lay close to him, her body close to his, sheltering him. Already he could feel his right foreleg beginning to go to sleep as her head rested upon it. He knew that upon his waking it would torture him, make him pay the price for this wonderful feeling of wholeness that was creeping across him. The fistful feeling of her tight light flame against his, but he did not care. Slowly, he pulled the sheet over them, and the blankets too. As her sleeping breast raised and lowered the sheets, he gazed over her one last time. Putting his lips to her ear, he breathed, "I love you," in a shallow of a whisper, and laid his head above hers. Though he thought sleep would be impossible, her sweet scent soon filled him. And with that, he went off into dreams that he thought to be very hard, as he went wonderful into this waking world.